Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Nora, and today I'm diving into a story that turned my world upside down, broke my heart into a million pieces, and ultimately taught me how to shine brighter than ever. This isn't just a love story, it's a raw, emotional journey of falling in love with someone who felt like a southern sunset, uncovering a secret that tore it all apart, and rebuilding myself through the pain. If you've ever poured your heart into someone who seemed like your forever, only to have it shattered by a hidden truth, or if you fought your way back to yourself after losing everything, this one's for you. It's a long, soul-stirring ride full of twists, tears, laughter, and triumphs, so grab a coffee, a snack, maybe a cozy blanket, and settle in. Let's get into it. I was 26 when this all began. I'd been living in Savannah, Georgia, for a few years, working as a freelance travel writer for magazines and blogs, chasing stories about hidden gems across the South. My apartment was a quirky loft in the historic district. Think creaky hardwood floors, bookshelves stuffed with travel guides, and a balcony overlooking Spanish moss-draped oaks and cobblestone squares. Life was a whirlwind, writing about hole-in-the-wall diners, biking through Forsyth Park, scribbling notes late into the night with the sound of cicadas outside my window. I loved Savannah's haunting charm, its historic squares, its ghost stories, its sultry air, but I was lonely. Dating here was a mix of charming tour guides and awkward coffee dates, never anything deep. I wanted a connection that felt like a Savannah sunset, warm, radiant, unforgettable. It all started one humid summer evening at a literary festival in Chippewa Square. I was there for work, covering the event for a travel magazine, notebook in hand, soaking up the energy of poets and authors reading under the oaks. That's when I met him, Julian. He was a novelist, reading an excerpt from his debut book about love and loss in the Lowcountry, his voice rich and soulful, his dark hair swept back, wearing a linen blazer that glowed under the festival lanterns. His words were electric, part poetry, part heartbreak, and I couldn't take my eyes off him. I scribbled notes, and he caught me after his reading, grinning. Writing my Pulitzer acceptance speech already, he teased, his southern accent soft and warm. I laughed, showed him my notes, mostly doodles of the square, and we started talking. Julian was a Savannah native, raised on Flannery O'Connor and marshland adventures. By day, he taught creative writing at a local college, but his passion was crafting stories that captured the South's soul, dreaming of a bestseller that would put Savannah on the literary map. He had this magnetic charm, part bookish dreamer, part Southern storyteller, quoting Faulkner one minute, joking about Savannah's ghost tours the next. We talked until the festival closed, swapping stories about our favorite spots. He loved the crab cakes at the old Pink House. I was obsessed with sunrise walks on Tybee Island. He told me about his childhood, exploring Savannah's squares with his mom, and I shared memories of growing up in a small Alabama town, where my dad taught me to love storytelling. When he asked to see me again, I said yes, my heart already racing. Our first date was at Forsyth Park, sitting under the iconic fountain, sharing iced tea from a local cafe as the sun set, casting golden light through the Spanish moss. Julian was different. He listened, really listened, asking about my childhood dreams of being a novelist, my love for weaving stories through words. He read me a short story he'd written, a haunting tale about a girl who carried the sunset in her eyes. "That's you, Nora," he said, and I melted. It was like something out of a novel, and I was hooked. We walked through the park, fireflies blinking around us, and he told me about his dream to write a book that blended Savannah's history with modern love stories. I shared my hope to start a travel blog, capturing the South's hidden stories. By the time we parted ways, I was already falling. Our relationship was a southern sunset, warm, vibrant, full of promise. Within weeks, we were inseparable. We'd drive out to the marshes of Skidaway Island, where I'd jot down notes from my articles while he sketched story ideas in his notebook. We'd hit up Savannah's bookstores, spending hours lost in Book Lady Bookstore, reading passages to each other in hushed tones. He'd surprise me with little gifts, a vintage fountain pen, a poem tucked in my bag. We'd spend lazy Sundays at his place, a cozy apartment in the Victorian district filled with books, typewriters, and half-finished manuscripts, cooking shrimp étouffée while he played Ray Charles on his record player. "You're my muse, Nora," he'd say, and I'd laugh, saying I was just a girl with a notebook and too many dreams. "Nah, you're my whole story," he'd reply, pulling me close, and I believed him. We built our own traditions. Every Saturday, we'd go to the Savannah Farmers Market, browsing local honey and picking out fresh peaches, debating the best way to make pecan pie. He swore by bourbon. I was a brown sugar purist. One time, he gave me a silver necklace with a tiny oak leaf charm. "So you'll always carry Savannah with you," he said, fastening it around my neck with a smile that made my heart skip. We'd end the day at a riverside cafe on River Street, sipping praline lattes and watching tourists stroll by. We talked about the future endlessly, him publishing his novel, me launching my blog and maybe a travel memoir. We planned a road trip to Charleston, dreaming of writing and exploring under palmetto trees. "You and me, Nora, we're gonna write the South," he'd say, his hand in mine, and I pictured us building a life as vibrant as Savannah's historic squares. Our first summer together was pure magic. We'd bike along the Savannah River, stopping to write under the oaks or share a snow cone from a street vendor. We'd sneak into literary readings at local bars, laughing under string lights, the city's church bells ringing in the distance. He'd invite me to his writing classes, letting me sit in and share my travel stories with his students, who loved my tales of southern diners. I'd share drafts of my articles, nervous but thrilled when he'd say, "Nora, you're gonna be the next Eudora Welty." We celebrated my 27th birthday at a jazz club on Bay Street, where he dedicated a poem to me, his voice weaving through the music. The crowd cheered, and I felt like the luckiest girl in Georgia. But around the 13-month mark, the sunset started to fade. Julian got distant. He'd go silent for days, blaming writing blocks or family drama with his sister, who lived in Atlanta. He'd cancel plans, like a weekend at a cabin on Tybee Island, saying he had a last-minute deadline or a teaching workshop. I tried to be supportive. Writing's a tough grind, right? But my gut was screaming something wasn't right. He'd leave his phone on silent, get defensive when I asked about his day, his usual warmth replaced with a guarded edge. My best friend, Lila, noticed it too. We'd been friends since I moved to Savannah, bonding over our love for sweet tea and ghost stories. "Nora, something's off," she said over coffee at the Sentient Bean. "Don't ignore the red flags." But I did. I wanted our romantic story to stay perfect, like a novel with a happy ending. The first red flag was a text I saw by accident. We were at his apartment, binge-watching Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, the scent of his latest gumbo experiment filling the air, when his phone lit up. "Miss you. When are you back in Charleston?" from someone named Clara. My heart sank. I asked, "Who's Clara?" He brushed it off, "Just a colleague from a writers' conference," but his voice was too quick, too tense. I let it go, telling myself I was overthinking, but the doubt planted a seed. Then came the work trips to Charleston that didn't add up. His Instagram showed him at trendy bars, not bookstores or campuses. I started noticing little things. A woman's scarf in his car, a faint whiff of perfume that wasn't mine, a receipt for a dinner for two at a Charleston restaurant when he'd said he was teaching late. Lila kept saying, "Check his phone, Nora. You deserve answers." But I didn't want to be paranoid. I clung to the hope that our love was real, that Julian was still my sunset. The unease grew. At a literary reading I was covering, Julian was a guest speaker, and I was so proud, scribbling notes on his every word. But afterward, I saw him chatting with a woman I didn't know, tall, with a bright smile, lingering too close as she praised his book. When I asked who she was, he said, "Just a fan, Nora, relax," but his tone was sharp, almost annoyed. I let it go, but the seed of doubt sprouted. Then came the late-night texts he'd hide, the meetings with editors that lasted until midnight. I started feeling like a secondary character in his story, not the protagonist, and it gnawed at me. My family back in Alabama noticed too. My mom, during our weekly calls, said, "Nora, you sound heavy. Is everything okay with Julian?" I brushed it off, but her words echoed Lila's warnings. The truth exploded one stormy September night, thunder rumbling over Savannah. We were at my loft, cooking shrimp and grits, the air thick with the scent of butter and tension. His phone buzzed on the counter, and I saw it before he could grab it, a text from Clara, "Miss you, love. When are you back in Charleston?" My heart stopped, the room spinning. I confronted him, my voice shaking like the oaks outside. "Julian, who's Clara?" He froze, his face pale, then sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Okay, Nora, I need to tell you the truth," he said, his voice heavy. And out it came, like a flood breaking a dam. Clara was his fiancée, living in Charleston. They'd been engaged for 3 years, planning to move to Savannah together to pursue his writing career, but he'd come alone for new opportunities, keeping her in the dark about us. He'd been traveling back and forth, juggling 2 lives, 2 loves, weaving a web of lies that I'd walked right into. "I love you, Nora," he said, tears streaming down his face. I didn't know how to end it with her. But his words felt like a ripped page from a book. I was betrayed, humiliated, like our entire romance was a story he'd plagiarized from someone else's manuscript. I screamed at him to leave, my voice raw, and threw the oak leaf necklace across the room, its clatter echoing as he walked out into the rain-soaked night. That night, I shattered. I cried until my throat burned, tears mixing with the storm outside my window. I deleted every text, every photo, burned the playlist he made me. Ray Charles's "Georgia on My Mind" now felt like a mockery. Savannah's historic squares turned into a painful reminder. Every bookstore, every cafe, every oak tree screamed his name. I felt like a fool. How had I missed the signs? Was I not enough? I replayed every moment, every farmer's market morning, every marsh sunset, every shared story, searching for where I went wrong. There were no answers, just a raw, gaping wound in my chest. I called Lila, sobbing uncontrollably, and she rushed over, staying the night, holding me as I fell apart. "You're enough, Nora," she whispered. "You'll get through this." But in that moment, I couldn't see how. The next 8 months were a fog of pain. I went through the motions at work, writing articles, meeting deadlines, but my heart wasn't in it. My stories lacked their usual spark, and editors started noticing. I avoided Chippewa Square, the riverfront, even my balcony, terrified I'd see something that reminded me of Julian. Friends tried to help. Lila dragged me to jazz nights at the Gray. My coworker Theo invited me to literary readings, but I was numb. I stopped writing for fun, let my notebooks gather dust, gained weight from stress-eating peach cobbler and sweet tea. One low point was finding a poem he'd written for me, tucked in a book, "To Nora, My Sunset." I tore it up, hating how it still hurt. The loneliness was crushing. I'd lie awake, replaying his lies, wondering if love was just a southern ghost story. The pain wasn't just emotional, it seeped into every corner of my life. I started messing up at work, submitting half-hearted drafts, missing deadlines. My editor pulled me aside, saying, "Nora, you're not yourself. Take some time if you need it." I felt like I was failing at everything. I stopped going to literary events, scared I'd see Julian's name on a flyer. I even avoided my favorite coffee shop, fearing I'd see a couple that reminded me of us. My family grew worried. My older brother, Caleb, drove down from Alabama, spending a weekend walking Savannah's squares with me, trying to pull me out of my spiral. "You're stronger than this, Nora," he said, but I didn't believe him. I started therapy with a kind woman named Dr. Morgan, spilling my hurt in quiet sessions by the river. She said, "Nora, your heart's broken, but it's still yours. Let it heal." It was a lifeline, but I was still drowning. About a year later, I hit a turning point. I was at a bookstore on Broughton Street, staring at a blank notebook, feeling like a shadow of myself, when I saw a flyer for a pottery workshop at a local art studio. On a whim, I signed up, desperate for anything to shake me out of my rut. The first class was a disaster, clay splattered everywhere, my bowl collapsing into a lumpy mess. But it was the first time I'd laughed in months, a real, belly-deep laugh that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. The instructor, a woman named Ruby, with warm eyes and a Savannah drawl, said, "Nora, let the clay hold your story. It's not about perfection, it's about feeling." I started pouring my pain into every piece, shaping mugs, vases, and plates that carried my grief, my anger, my hope. Each session felt like stitching myself back together. In that class, I met Harper, a painter who'd moved to Savannah to start over after her own heartbreak. We bonded instantly, and she became my lifeline, inviting me to art nights at her studio where we'd sip wine, paint, and talk about everything but the past. I started saying yes to life again, bit by bit. I joined a writing group in the Starland district, a small circle of creatives who met in a cozy cafe. I shared short stories about heartbreak, resilience, and the beauty of starting over, pouring my emotions into words. The feedback was electric. People said my stories made them feel seen, like they weren't alone. One member, a poet named Ezra, told me, "Nora, your words are like a porch light in a storm." I started to believe him. I signed up for swing dancing classes downtown, stumbling through steps at a historic ballroom, laughing as I tripped over my own feet but finding joy in the rhythm. I started running through Forsyth Park at dawn, the Spanish moss swaying as I pushed forward, each step a reminder that I was still here. I took a solo trip to the Okefenokee swamp, renting a cabin, journaling by the water as alligators glided by. It was terrifying to travel alone, but it taught me I could be my own safe place, a harbor for my own heart. New people entered my life, slowly filling the void. At a writer's meetup, I met Theo, a travel blogger with a quick laugh and a passion for storytelling through words. We started collaborating on a blog series about Savannah's hidden gems, haunted bars, secret gardens, gullah storytellers. It wasn't romantic, but it was real, reigniting my love for writing. Theo introduced me to his friend Maya, a historian who led ghost tours, and we bonded over our shared love of Savannah stories. I volunteered at a local animal shelter, spending weekends walking dogs and falling in love with a scruffy mutt named Moss, with soulful eyes and a lopsided grin. I adopted him, and he became my shadow, curling up beside me as I wrote or journaled late into the night. I tried kayaking on the Savannah River, flipping over a dozen times in the murky water but laughing through every splash, feeling alive again. My creativity roared back, like a tide returning to the shore. I revived my notebook, filling it with stories and poems, and relaunched my travel blog, sharing my writing alongside photos of Savannah's squares and marshes. To my surprise, it grew fast. Readers emailed me, saying my vulnerability gave them hope, that my stories captured the soul of the South. I pitched a memoir to a local publisher, a book about healing through travel and storytelling, and they offered me a deal. Writing it, surrounded by a community who believed in me, felt like a dream I hadn't dared to dream. I also started a YouTube channel, posting vlogs about my journey, writing, heartbreak, healing. The response was overwhelming. Viewers from across the country shared their own tales of betrayal and resilience, creating a community that felt like a warm hug. One video, where I talked about turning pain into stories while shaping a clay vase, went viral, with comments like, "This gave me hope to keep going." I cried reading them, realizing I wasn't alone either. The healing wasn't linear. Some days, I'd hear a jazz tune or see a sunset and feel a pang, the ghost of Julian lingering. Therapy with Dr. Morgan helped me navigate those moments, teaching me to honor the pain without letting it define me. I started hosting open mic nights at a local bookstore, giving other writers a space to share their stories. I took more solo trips, each one a step toward reclaiming myself. A weekend in St. Augustine to write about its history, a drive to Asheville to explore its literary scene. I even started going to literary festivals again, not as Julian's girlfriend but as Nora, the writer, capturing the joy of others without fear. My career took off in ways I hadn't expected. My blog led to freelance gigs with national travel magazines, and I was invited to speak at a writers' conference in Atlanta. Standing on that stage, sharing my journey from heartbreak to healing, I felt like I was finally living my truth. I started hosting writing workshops in Savannah, teaching others how to tell their stories. My memoir, Sunsets and Second Chances, became a local hit, and readers reached out, saying it inspired them to face their own pain. I kept vlogging, sharing recipes, travel tips, and personal stories, building a community that felt like family. 5 years later, I ran into Julian at a literary festival in Chippewa Square, the same place we'd met. He looked worn, his blazer frayed, his dreams of a bestseller still just dreams. He told me Clara had left him, that his writing career stalled. "I lost the best thing, Nora," he said, his voice heavy with regret. I waited for the old ache, the spark that used to light me up. Nothing. "I'm good, Julian," I said, smiling softly. I wrote my own story. I walked away, the festival lanterns glowing behind me, the scent of magnolias in the air, feeling lighter than ever. Now, I'm 31, living my truth. My memoir's gaining traction, my YouTube channel's thriving, and I'm planning a trip to Ireland to write about its folklore. I date when it feels right, but I know my worth doesn't depend on anyone else. Love's not a perfect story. It's messy, real, and possible when you're whole. Savannah's still my home, its oak-lined squares and marsh sunsets a reminder of how far I've come. I'm not the girl who fell for a lie anymore. I'm the woman who wrote her own ending, one word, one step, one sunset at a time. Alright, guys, what's your story of love, lies, or finding your sunset? Drop it in the comments. Let's lift each other up. If this resonated, like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Thanks for joining me on this epic ride. See you next time.